So here we have the latest indie game making the rounds on YouTube, on Steam Greenlight, wherever else fine indie games are sold. SUPERHOT, a game which loves its title so much it feels the need to repeat it over and over and over again.
SUPERHOT, 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 SUPERHOT.
Within a day or two of the game's trailer going up on YouTube, there are about 10,000 video playthroughs to supplement it, all looking to get 15 minutes of fame out of a 5-minute game. But that's not what this video is about. In this video, I'll be explaining how the game squanders a perfectly good premise by wrapping it up in layers upon layers of pretension. It is not the first indie game of its kind to do so, and it will unlikely be the last. The premise is simple and actually kind of intriguing. Time moves only when you do. It's bullet time without any sort of meters attached to it or any button to bring it up. Time stands still when you do. It doesn't mean you can just spend the entire level in frozen time either. You gotta move around so your bullets can actually hit your enemies, so the shells can eject from your gun, letting you fire off your next shot, so you can go pick up other people's guns when yours inevitably runs out of ammo. It puts you in the predicament of having a major advantage over your enemies, except of course that their advantage is numbers. And despite not having a meter attached to your power, it still has its limitations. In just about any other first-person shooter, handled by any other developer, this idea could be implemented in some fucking cool ways. The problem is, SUPERHOT was developed by the SUPERHOT team. I understand that the game is not finished yet, that it is currently looking for approval on Greenlight, and that if it gets approved, they will probably add more content to it. All that being said, the game still suffers a great deal of problems, both technically and especially stylistically. For starters, the game looks fucking terrible. In what some might call an attempt to be artsy, the developers decided to use monochrome and red as their full color palettes. If you're gullible, you might call this visual style striking. In actuality, the developers didn't feel like making any actual textures. After all, they'd have to apply them to some ugly models. I mean, your gun looks terrible, the enemies look terrible, every object in the world looks terrible. The enemy animations and posing are awful too. The dev team is in desperate need of actual graphical artists, and I hope that they hire them, because this is basically unacceptable. But of course, we're going through a phase right now in gaming where faux retro graphics are still acceptable, so I doubt any changes will get made to it, even if the game gets approved on Greenlight and gets actual funding or whatever else. If we're really unlucky, the game will be successful, and will inspire a whole wave of similar indie games with similar graphic styles. So look forward to that shit. The game's entire soundtrack consists of one annoying sound, which plays incessantly. It definitely helps set the tone as being boring and pretentious and overly artsy. There's only one sound for any given action in the game, including firing guns, shells ejecting, tossing your gun, so you'll be hearing the same sound effects over and over again, repeating immediately after one another. I'd compare it to a game where you only have one sound effect for walking, and you end up doing a lot of walking, so you end up hearing the same sound effect over and over again, almost endlessly. What I'm trying to say is that it all gets very old very quickly. It runs out its welcome in about 5 minutes time, which, conveniently, is the whole length of the game as it currently stands. I can't imagine playing this game for an hour or two with its current aesthetic. It would have to undergo a complete change should the game become a full game. Unfortunately, that's probably not in the cards either at this point, is it? The developers seem fully committed to this, almost aggressive about it, with text that flashes on the screen a word at a time. Eventually, you get treated to a full motion video, which is actually helpful in reminding you how bad the game looks.
You have served me well.
I think the developers were trying to evoke BioShock here.
Now, dispose of yourself.
But of course, the moment I'm referring to in BioShock actually had tension building up to it and a whole story.
Just walk through the window.
This comes 4 minutes into a game that had no prior full motion video in it, and this ends up looking fucking silly. Once again, it does a great job of reinforcing how pretentious this whole package is. But you know what? For as much as I hate everything about this game stylistically, I'd forgive it. I'd give it all a pass if the core gameplay was satisfying in the slightest. Unfortunately, it is not. I can't think of a way they could have implemented the premise any more poorly. Okay, maybe there's at least one way, but still, this is pretty fucking poor. Your gun has no weight, no punch to it. It just fires a bullet in a straight line and eventually hits your target. Assuming that you don't miss, which is really hard to do, especially considering that you can freeze time and take as much of it as you want to line up each of your shots. Interestingly enough, bullets don't move all that fast when time is in full motion either. You'll notice that you can see enemy projectiles while they're in the air. You can dodge them without having to freeze time. It's not that hard. In fact, I was able to complete a full playthrough of the game without stopping for a second and without dying once. The bullets could definitely afford to move faster in frozen time and not frozen time, because as it currently stands, the game is way too easy. There are also numerous problems with collision, with your gun clipping through any wall, window, or column you may be standing next to. The enemy AI is also laughably incompetent. If you get out of their line of sight and hide in a corner for a few seconds, they'll forget all about you. Certain guards you can stand directly in front of, and they won't even bat an eye. Of course, the game's greatest defense is that it doesn't take advantage of its gimmick. None of the fights require you to use your power to stop time. As I mentioned before, you can play through the whole game without stopping for a moment. There are no timing puzzles or trick shots or anything that takes advantage of your ability. None of the levels feel as if they were built around the mechanic. You know you have a problem when your game's one defining feature feels like an afterthought. Which brings me to the question of, what was the primary purpose of this game? Was it to showcase this concept? Did the developers believe they were making a genuinely good game? Or are we to infer from level 4 that this whole game is some sort of elaborate trolling attempt? Did I mention this level yet? It's really stupid. You walk up to these statues and the text flashes on the screen telling you such bold, daring statements as, "Trolling is art," or "Trolling is trolling," or "Art is art." Either the developers are the most pretentious schmucks who have ever walked the earth, or they're playing a big joke on us. Assuming this is all some sort of joke, well, the joke's certainly on them at this point, isn't it? Now they're being made to make a whole game out of this joke game concept they came up with during a 7-day challenge. Now, tens of thousands of people are expecting a full game out of this, willing to pay money for it. And what if they should buy it and the game ends up disappointing them? It'll count as a strike against this indie developer, and they'll have a harder time drumming up support for any future titles they might try to make. But if this is truly the best that Blue Brick can do, well, maybe we'll be better off without him.
Super hot, super hot, super hot, super hot, super hot, super